Hello there, I'm Ola Juko, consultant at the Honeycomb Works and your facilitator for the How to Be an Ally workshop. I'm dedicated to transforming workplaces into inclusive spaces for everyone, with a particular focus on anti-Black racism and neurodivergence.
Hi, everybody. My name is Muireann and I lead on research and impact at the Honeycomb Works. And what that means is it's my role to make sure that everything we do is coming from a very solid evidence base and really interrogating the evidence and the research around creating inclusive cultures, because that is absolutely fundamental to our approach. And then the impact side of things is around making sure we are having the positive impact we want to have. So helping organizations create cultures where everybody feels able to belong and everyone feels free to invent. So, how do we measure that impact and how can we be certain that we are having that positive impact when we are working with organizations? My background is in critical and creative analysis and really thinking about research strategies and approaches and considering the way we prioritize some ways of knowing over other ways of knowing and being critical of the existing structures and ways we understand the world and the way we all exist within it. And my personal research interest, I suppose, is in the experiences of LGBTQ plus people in the world and in the workplace, both from my own lived experience and also from, as I said, a research perspective. So, yes, I will be co facilitating with Ola on our How to Be an Ally event and very much looking forward to it.
So let's dig into some questions. These collect So let's dig into some questions. These were collected from previous events that we've held, and also from people in our DEI community. The first being, I don't really understand why guys is such a big deal.
Yes, interesting question to start with. Thank you, Ola. I think maybe I'll share a little bit of context around where we hear this question and how often it comes up. And it's usually directly connected to conversations around inclusive communication and specifically gendered language. So where when we have this conversation and this question, it's usually when we start saying, hey, let's try and be a bit more conscious of the way we use gendered language in the workplace and the default or the norms perhaps that we have accepted and taken for granted. And I think that often the first response or one of the early responses people have is, well, I use guys all the time with my team, with my friends, and nobody really minds. It's not a big deal. And I think it's a great conversation to have with folks because it really starts helping people to take a more critical standpoint. Essentially, I think we should be shifting away from using guys to refer to mixed gender groups because it does, whether we acknowledge it or not, it really does reinforce a default or a norm as male. And that is really powerful in spaces and team meetings, in organizational presentations. When we say guys, we are saying the default, the norm, the expected majority here is male. And not only does that, of course, exclude anyone who doesn't identify as a man, it just subtly reinforces that norm. And I think when people say, oh gosh, you're overreacting, I have a really, well, I think one way to test whether that is me overreacting, just replace it with gals. So if we take gals as being roughly equivalent, thinking about women or girls, and see what happens if you join a meeting, a mixed gender group, and you say, hey gals, how was your weekend? Just have a moment and respond and watch how people respond. And then I think come back to me and tell me that it doesn't have any impact and it isn't a big deal. What do you think, Ola? Anything to add?
Yeah, I would just hammer home the fact that it's not about intention, it's about impact, and we're actually going to get onto that in a moment. But especially thinking about people that, you know, just to reiterate, the people that are trans or gender non-conforming, and how that can be quite triggering for them.
And also, I suppose, why not just try something new, shift into a different, if it's a word you're very used to using, try something else out for a while. How about folks? I use folks all the time now, or team, or many, many other options. Find what works for you.
Definitely.
But yeah, you mentioned, Ola, that we were going to talk about impact in a moment. And actually, that's a good prompt for me to ask you a question we get very, very often, which is around, well, I didn't mean to cause any offense, or I didn't really mean it. So shouldn't that count for something? Is that not important? So what do you think about that?
Um, I would say that you're not the receiver. And in that, I mean, you need to shift the focus from you and decenter yourself, who is probably part of the majority group in this instance. I need people to think that my words or actions have caused this person to feel XYZ. So, do you really want to continue just because you didn't mean it? Or is it that now that you are aware, you may continue just because you didn't mean it? And I understand like it may be very natural for you to want to defend your intentions, but I think it's really important, especially in these moments, to show humility and genuine interest and attempt understanding of the realities of others. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. And I suppose that I love you said, to shift your focus. And I think actually, if we hit somebody with our car, it doesn't matter that that wasn't your intention. The impact is rightfully where we focus. Or if you, I don't know, throw something across a room and you accidentally hit your friend, your sister, again, you don't focus on your intention, but you focus on, oh my gosh, that person is hurt. How can I help? So yes, totally agree with what you said, Ola.
Great. Okay, so here's another question. Somebody asked, if I don't know why something is inappropriate, is it okay to ask?
Oh, another good question. I think, as with most things, it depends on the context. I think, as a general rule, if you are considering asking somebody a question and you're wondering, I wonder if that's appropriate, that's probably a good reason to pause, because there's probably something there that you have considered or something you've picked up on. And then I think if you're trying to figure out how to proceed, one good thing to ask yourself is, well, would I ask this question to a person who wasn't part of this group? So is this very specifically tied to their identity and not something I would consider appropriate asking somebody else? Um, and I think when I'm sharing that, I'm thinking specifically around the trans community and some of the questions that folks get asked that are really invasive and connected to medical information and very personal details about somebody's personal private life. And the reality is, cis people do not get asked those questions regularly. So trans people should also not be asked those questions regularly. So that's a good check in. Is this something I would ask the general public or not? Um, and having said that, there are places to go to find information. So maybe try and find out for yourself. Look on the internet, go to your HR team, go to any resources that you have internally, before I would say asking a person a potentially inappropriate question. I would say just take some time, see if you can get the information yourself. And then, depending on the context and your relationship with that person and your history and connection with them, then you have to make a call on that yourself and be ready to hear it if they tell you that no, that wasn't actually appropriate. Anything to add, Ola?
Yeah. Great examples there. I'd also say very cheekily that you could also contact us at the Honeycomb Works if you need some help in that area. But definitely, I think it's being proactive yourself and actually putting in the effort yourself to try and learn and also understand that, of course, you're going to continually learn. Things always change, but just being willing to understand that you're not going to be absolutely amazing and incredible and you will make mistakes, but that's okay if you're willing to be proactive and to continually learn.
Final question for you, Ola, and I apologize in advance because I think this question is something we hear a lot, and I know can be quite a difficult one to respond to because it can provoke some very strong feelings and emotions, and rightfully so. But I'm going to ask you because I think it does come up an awful lot, and it's this conversation about woke culture. And you can't see me, but I'm very much putting I'm using the terms and expressions that folks have used for in asking us this question. But just talk to me a bit, Ola, about your response to that question when it comes up and what you think is actually happening when people ask us that.
Yeah, so a lot of the times it's like, what is woke culture? What's this new woke culture? And firstly, to put it simply, it's not new. It actually originated in the Black community, and essentially, it's an adjective meaning to alert to racial prejudice and discrimination. And to give some more context, it originated in AAVE, which is African American Vernacular English, and essentially the appropriation of this term, it co-opts really important and essential ideas around social justice and equality, and it essentially serves as a distraction. It redirects the argument and it derails discussions, to focus on the merits of woke culture instead of the very real need to focus on social justice. Um, you know, they use the word woke to mock and to criticize inclusion, and it's used a lot more by the not so inclusive. I think quite it's quite reflective of how so many things created by marginalized groups or out groups to kind of depict their oppression or put their oppression into words, and is kind of hijacked by those that are doing the oppression to kind of become a nonsense word, so that word loses its power and loses its meaning. It's quite frustrating actually to see so many people that are refusing to, you see it on Twitter, you see it online, used by people that are against all things inclusion. And it just makes a mockery of what it stands for, which is just being alert and aware of social justice and social justice movements.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you've said there about it being a tactic almost, we're talking about the meaning of this word or the concept as opposed to acknowledging the need to really engage with the conversation that word is involved in. Absolutely.
Mm. Unfortunately, that's all we'll have time for today. A huge thank you for listening. We hope you've walked away with some questions answered. And if your organisation has specific questions, don't forget that you can get them addressed by joining one of our events or workshops. This month, we're excited to celebrate South Asian Heritage Month in collaboration with the amazing Hannah Litt, an award-winning DEI changemaker. We're offering a fireside chat and a How to Be an Ally workshop, complete with a Q&A session. If you're interested, check out our website at thehoneycombworks.com/SAHM-2024. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Connect with us on LinkedIn at The Honeycomb Works or reach out to us via email at hi@thehoneycombworks.com. Thanks again for joining us, and we can't wait to hear from you.